Sheriff Gonzalez, thank you for taking the time today. We're actually sitting 10 to 15 feet apart because of the current public health crisis that we're in, but we have some exciting things to talk about, namely this Operations Relentless Pursuit grant that the county applied for and was notified that it received. So this is kind of an exciting time because not only are we in the midst of a health crisis, but certainly some would say that we're even in the midst of a public safety crisis here in Albuquerque, and the statistics are beginning to point to that.
Well, first of all, there's a public health crisis with the COVID-19 virus. And so operationally, we have to make our adjustments on how we do our service and make sure we take all the precautionary measures to ensure the safety of our deputies and to ensure the safety of the public. So that's always first and foremost. The other thing we're looking at is that we still have to deal with the crime crisis that's going on in Albuquerque and our efforts to fight crime. So we have some compounding issues here that raise concerns not only for our agency, but also great concerns for the public. So those are where we have to strike a balance between how we divvy up our resources and our efforts when we're looking at these two different complicated issues.
And it is complicated. This isn't something any of us expected, so it's kind of the first time out of the gate of dealing with it and, sort of tailoring what we do on a normal basis to now include something much bigger that nobody's ever dealt with before.
Exactly.
Speaking of that, and you were talking about, being in the midst of a crime crisis while also now in the midst of a public health crisis, Albuquerque's been identified as, one of the 7 cities, the most violent cities in the country. It's been reported on. What, that kind of problem, leads me to ask you another question about this grant that the county's just recently received. This is kind of an important thing when you consider everything that's been going on.
Absolutely. Over the last couple of years, all of us have witnessed in the metro area, law enforcement officers, families, members getting killed, federal employees, members of society that were doing good work as far as retired teachers, athletes. And it's raised a great concern not only for us locally, but nationally. So it's put us on the national spotlight in terms of how serious the crime crisis is. We're looking at making the effort because of my obligations constitutionally and independent, and having an independent office to fight that crime. So it's a great honor for our department and our staff to be a lead law enforcement agency, local agency, to take part in that. And so we applied for this grant through the Bureau of Justice Affairs, and it's been awarded to us. It hasn't been released. It's in the legal process right now. We have sent the grant back to Washington, and we're waiting to hear back on that. We have to be very patient right now in understanding that we don't expect a very fast turnaround because of the two issues we're dealing with. Us locally with the crime, but on a national basis with the public health issue and COVID-19 issue.
All right, it does definitely slow things down.
Yes.
Let's talk about this grant a little bit. This is basically operations in the Relentless Pursuit. Talk a little bit about this. This is kind of specific to what you do.
Yes, absolutely. This operation is specifically designed to address violent crimes and those networks that deal with violent crimes. So that's specifically where this effort and this money would be directed, and it's broken down to 3 different areas in this grant funding. One is equipment, the other is supply, and the other is training. And that's specifically what this money will be used for. A lion's share of that money will be used for equipment, to include 20 new vehicles, radios, vests, and other equipment.
Gotcha. Now you talked a little bit about the legal review. You've sent the application back. You're still in the process, and it's hard to say with the climate of what's going on right now nationally how long that's going to take. But let me ask you this. You talked a little bit about, this is a grant that, we talked a little bit about the issues facing Albuquerque and having it be one of the most violent cities right now and identified as one of those. And this is in Albuquerque, and yet the grant is going to Bernalillo County. I guess, can you help delineate how do the roles differ for you that allows BCSO to accept a grant like this, but not the city of Albuquerque?
Sure. Well, the city of Albuquerque has an immigrant-friendly status, and the county also has that status, but we have an independent office. So based on my responsibilities to be the chief conservator of peace in Bernalillo County, I have an obligation to make sure that people receive a service and keep them safe. So that's why we're able to receive the funds, because we work independently of the county commission.
So you're saying your parameters are different than the city. It allows you to, and the city is within the county, so obviously your number one goal is to keep people safe, and this will help allow you to do that. Yes,
being the elected official and the chief conservator of peace gives me that opportunity to receive that funding and keep people safe.
Gotcha. You know, the U.S. Attorney John Anderson said that in order to receive the grant, the city has to agree to certain conditions following, allowing a federal audit of the forms the city employees fill out saying, legally allowed to work in the United States, wouldn't prohibit departments or employees from providing information. Did the county have to agree to those same conditions?
Yes, there's 59 different conditions in that grant that you have to comply with. And yes, we will comply with those 59 conditions.
See, so basically, it's much like any other grant that kind of holds the applicant's feet to the fire with,
yes,
answering lots of, you have to fulfill lots of requirements along the way to actually be able to receive the funding.
Yes, those 59 conditions are set in place for transparency reasons and accountability reasons. And, we take pride in what we do, and we want to make sure that we're transparent to the public. So we don't have any issues with compliance in this grant.
What is the total funding of the grant?
The total amount of the grant that was awarded was $1,428,571.
And that will be broken up, or will it all come at one time?
It should be released all at one time, and basically there'll be a constant monitoring and oversight of the grant, and one of our captains will be overseeing that grant. So we're looking forward to it, and we're looking forward, and we're excited about what we're going to have to offer this community in the next several months and a couple of years going on. This is a 24-month grant, and so we're looking at, once that money's released, is we have 2 years to spend it.
Good. Beyond the conditions of the grant, let's just get back to, the fact that there's a public health emergency going on concurrently with what some would already call a public safety emergency going on here. Again, just the fact that Albuquerque has been identified as one of the 7 most violent cities in America with a crime rate nearly 4 times the national average. What do you truly hope to accomplish with this grant funding in addressing this issue?
Well, we want to look at this as a long-term strategy to address violent crime. We need more accountability in the criminal justice system. We believe we'll get that accountability with the federal prosecution. That's why we're willing to collaborate and team up with our federal partners and give additional resources. We believe that this is in the best interest and the greater good of all the people in Bernalillo County and Albuquerque. So in a long-term effort to ensure that these violent offenders aren't on the street anymore, this is the best approach.
Gotcha. You were talking about equipment, supplies, training. Is this enough funding to really make a difference, have an impactful presence with this?
Any administrator is going to tell you there's never enough money, right? But what we believe is that as long as we're willing to collaborate and include other people to address the crime issue, to include nonprofits, businesses, the citizen, if you're talking about faith-based groups, anybody in the criminal justice system, we're going to get a better effort. What we want to do is ensure that we're using the people's money responsibly and as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And we're going to make sure that this money gets placed in the right places to fight crime. So I think that based on, our efforts and our commitment to make adjustments to ensure that these people aren't on the street anymore, it's going to benefit everyone. Not only in the short term as we come out and do these operations, but you'll see it 5 and 10 years from now.
Gotcha. So really the focus shouldn't necessarily be on who's getting it or who can apply. I mean, this is going to help the area in general.
The focus should always be on what's best for the community. it should never be focused on one entity. This is a collaborative effort and a community effort. We should always do what's in the best interest of everyone. And this is what's in the best interest of the citizens of Bernalillo County and Albuquerque.